My friend hit my dog, after which I kicked her out of the house and she was fired from her job. If someone had told me 5 years ago that I would one day ask Darlene to leave my home, no, force her to leave, I wouldn't have believed it. Darlene and I met back in college in 2016. Her major was environmental design, mine was communications. We shared a few general ed classes, and we both spent a lot of time in the campus cafe, which is where the friendship really took root. What started as casual conversation over overpriced lattes became study sessions, meme swaps, and late-night rants about professors and deadlines. Darlene was vibrant, hilarious, and always seemed to find humor in the mundane. It didn't take long before we were practically inseparable. College years were good to us. We pulled all-nighters side by side, leaned on each other during tough breakups, and even worked together on a few group projects despite being in different programs. When graduation rolled around, we made vague promises to stay in touch, the kind most college friends make. But unlike most, we actually did. Darlene moved back to her hometown after graduation, a smaller city 2 states away. She landed a job fairly quickly and moved back in with her parents to save money. Meanwhile, I inherited my grandfather's condo near the heart of my city. It wasn't extravagant, but it was well located, had 3 bedrooms, and I was immensely grateful for it, especially in today's housing market. Over the next couple of years, we stayed connected through social media and the occasional call. Darlene would share updates about work, vent about her parents' strict routines, and often express how much she missed the freedom of college life. I didn't think much of it, we all feel that way sometimes, right? 3 years after graduation, she reached out unexpectedly. She said she'd been offered a job in my city with better pay and a better title. She was planning the move, and without skipping a beat, she asked if I had a spare bedroom she could use for a while. I'll admit, I hesitated. Living with a friend isn't the same as hanging out with them. You learn things you wouldn't otherwise know. But our history ran deep, and I remembered all the ways we'd supported each other during school. I figured it wouldn't be forever. Just long enough for her to get on her feet. I agreed. I set up ground rules, nothing harsh, just simple expectations. She'd contribute to groceries and utilities, clean up after herself, and find her own parking since my unit only had 1 reserved spot, and I needed it for my car. As for rent, I offered her a very low rate, far below market value, as a courtesy to a friend. She moved in the following week. At first, it was great. I had gotten used to living alone, but having Darlene around made the apartment feel warmer somehow. We watched movies after work, ordered takeout, and talked for hours. For a while, it really did feel like our college days again, comforting and familiar. But the honeymoon phase didn't last. About a month into living together, I noticed subtle changes. Darlene started complaining constantly, about her job, her coworkers, the city, even the weather. She said she felt overwhelmed, that the transition wasn't what she thought it would be. I tried to be supportive. We all go through rocky phases, and I figured she just needed time to adjust. I went out of my way to help her feel at home. I'd cover more than my share of groceries some weeks. Once, when she was particularly down about something her supervisor said, I surprised her with her favorite takeout and spent the evening just listening. When she mentioned being short on rent 1 month, I told her she could pay me later, no problem. I tried. I truly did. But things started shifting in ways I didn't expect. Darlene began making small comments, things that at first sounded like jokes, but soon started to sting. She'd ask how much I earned, how I could afford certain things, and why I seemed to be doing so well. Mind you, my job wasn't glamorous. I had loans, a dog, and a car payment. I budgeted carefully, made sacrifices, and saved where I could. I tried giving her budgeting tips, but she'd shrug them off or roll her eyes. One day, I noticed her going through my mail. She didn't hide it, she was standing by the counter with a letter I'd left unopened. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Oh, I was just curious. I thought it might be a bill or something important," she said casually, putting it down. It wasn't the first time, either. She'd ask pointed questions about my bank account, my savings, how I budgeted. Once, she said, half-jokingly, that maybe I didn't need to charge her rent at all. After all, I clearly had enough saved up. I laughed it off at the time, but it bothered me more than I wanted to admit. I started noticing patterns. She rarely cleaned up after herself. Dishes would pile in the sink. Food wrappers and empty cups would be left on the coffee table for days. Her laundry often ended up in shared spaces, the couch, the hallway, even the dining chairs. I asked her to clean up a few times, but she always said she was tired and would get to it later. Later rarely came. And then there was the issue with my parking spot. Despite our agreement, she'd frequently use it. I'd come home after a long day and find her car parked there, forcing me to find a spot several blocks away. When I brought it up, she'd laugh and say, "I didn't think you'd be home that early." I started feeling like a guest in my own home. Still, I didn't want to confront her too harshly. I kept telling myself she was just adjusting, that it would get better. But the turning point wasn't the messiness, or the passive comments, or the disregard for space. It was my dog. One afternoon, I came home earlier than usual. I walked through the front door and froze. Darlene was standing over my dog, a gentle, aging golden retriever named Murphy, and she kicked him. Not hard enough to injure, thank goodness. But it wasn't a nudge, either. It was deliberate. Murphy yelped, and I rushed over, heart racing. "What are you doing?" I yelled. She looked at me, completely unfazed. He was in the way. I tripped over him. Murphy hadn't moved. He was lying in his bed, the same spot he always chose by the window. I scooped him up, checked him over, and while he seemed okay, I still took him to the vet that evening for peace of mind. When I got back, Darlene rolled her eyes and said, "It's just a dog. You're overreacting." That was the moment I knew I couldn't do this anymore. After what happened with Murphy, my dog, something in me shifted. It was like a wire snapped. No matter how much I tried to rationalize her behavior or chalk it up to stress, I couldn't look past it anymore. That evening, after I got back from the vet and confirmed Murphy was physically unharmed, I sat on the couch in silence. Darlene came out of her room, acting like nothing had happened, and asked what was for dinner. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at her, unsure how to even begin. "I don't understand how you think any of this is okay," I finally said. She blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" "You kicked my dog," I said. "You've been disrespecting the house, my space, the agreement we made. And now this. Darlene, I can't do this anymore." At first, she laughed like I was exaggerating. When I didn't laugh with her, her expression darkened. "You're making a big deal out of nothing," she said. "He was in the way. He was lying in his bed. He wasn't in anyone's way." The conversation quickly escalated. I told her I wanted her to move out, I'd give her 1 week. I told her we could either remain distant acquaintances or go our separate ways entirely, but I couldn't live like this any longer. That's when the tears came. "You're just going to throw me out?" she cried. "After everything? Without even giving me a proper warning?" "Darlene, I've tried for months," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "You've crossed so many boundaries, and I kept giving you the benefit of the doubt. But this, hurting Murphy, this isn't something I can look past." She started listing reasons why she wasn't to blame: stress at work, homesickness, financial pressure, loneliness. I listened, and I even understood. But I also knew none of those reasons justified the behavior I'd been putting up with. Eventually, the conversation dissolved into back-and-forth accusations. I told her she had become entitled, careless, and inconsiderate. She told me I had changed, become cold, and lacked compassion. At one point, I think I called her spoiled. She cried again, then stormed off into her room and slammed the door. I didn't sleep much that night. The next day, things took a strange turn. I started receiving messages, texts and DMs from some of our old university friends. A few were neutral, asking if everything was okay. Others were far less kind. "Wow. I can't believe you kicked her out over nothing. She said you blindsided her. That's not what friends do. Whatever happened to loyalty?" I was stunned. Then someone forwarded me a Facebook post Darlene had made. It was a long, emotional message where she claimed I'd suddenly turned on her and kicked her out for no reason, painting the picture of a friend who'd betrayed her in her darkest hour. She said she was heartbroken and homeless, and that some people only pretend to be kind when it's convenient. She never mentioned Murphy. Never mentioned the passive-aggressive remarks, the financial tension, the messes, the mail snooping, the repeated boundary violations. All of that was missing. She had rewritten the story to make herself look like a victim. At first, I was angry. But mostly, I felt tired. I could have gone online and posted a rebuttal. I could have aired everything that had happened, screenshot the texts, told my side. But I didn't. I just didn't have the emotional energy anymore. Instead, I focused on the one thing that mattered most, moving forward. Darlene packed her things over the course of the next week. We barely spoke during that time. She was cold, almost robotic, moving silently through the apartment with her headphones on and a glare permanently plastered on her face. She left on a Thursday morning. I changed the locks the same afternoon. The apartment felt different immediately. Quieter. Lighter. I sat on the floor with Murphy, surrounded by the echo of empty space, and just breathed. It felt like grieving a breakup. The truth is, there had been so many good moments over the years. I wasn't pretending when I said we were close, we had been. I had loved her like a sister. And that's what made it all hurt more. Even after she was gone, the grief lingered. I kept questioning myself. Was I too harsh? Should I have spoken up sooner? Did I allow things to escalate by staying silent for too long? Could I have handled it more gracefully? I didn't know. But what I did know was that I wasn't crazy for wanting my home to feel safe. For wanting mutual respect. For drawing the line after my dog was mistreated. I thought that would be the end of it. But life had other plans. A few weeks passed after Darlene moved out. I didn't hear from her directly, but I knew she was still telling people her version of the story. I continued receiving messages from mutual friends, some supportive, some skeptical, and a few that just wanted the gossip. I ignored most of it. I didn't feel the need to defend myself to people who weren't in the room when things fell apart. Then, something unexpected happened. One of our old classmates, a woman named Gwen, who had always floated on the edges of our circle, reached out. Gwen and Darlene hadn't been particularly close in school, but they'd stayed in touch more consistently than I realized. Gwen had even commented on Darlene's Facebook post, saying how awful it was that she'd been left to fend for herself. Now, Gwen was texting me. Her first message was short, "Hey, can we talk?" I stared at it for a moment, then replied, "Sure. Everything okay?" She didn't wait long. Within minutes, my phone rang. Her voice was tight and fast, the kind of tone people use when they're holding in frustration and trying to sound polite. "I'm sorry to just drop this on you," she said, "but, how in the world did you live with Darlene for a year?" I blinked in surprise. "Wait, she's living with you now?" "Yes," Gwen said, letting out a long sigh. "And I'm losing my mind." Apparently, after moving out of my apartment, Darlene had nowhere else to go. Her family wasn't an option, she'd burned some bridges there too. Gwen had offered her a place to stay out of compassion, believing what she'd posted online. She thought Darlene just needed a safe space and a second chance. Sound familiar? I let Gwen talk, and she unloaded everything. Darlene had been with her for barely 3 weeks, and already, the problems had started to mirror my own experience, almost down to the detail. She left dishes piled up. Took over Gwen's living room with her clothes and belongings. Used Gwen's reserved parking space, even after agreeing not to. And worst of all, she started digging into Gwen's finances, asking about her salary, how she could afford her place, and why she was so uptight about money. She even went through my desk drawer, Gwen said. I came home and found her reading my tax documents. I didn't say, "I told you so." I just listened. But then Gwen's voice lowered, and her next words came slower. "There's something else. Something more serious." She explained that Darlene had borrowed her debit card a few days earlier, claimed she needed it to pay for groceries since her digital wallet wasn't working. Gwen, being trusting, allowed it. Later, she noticed $2,000 missing from her account. Expensive dinners. Boutique shopping. Charges from clubs and rideshare apps. When Gwen confronted Darlene, she didn't deny it. In fact, she got angry. She yelled that Gwen was making her feel like a thief and said she deserved a little support after everything she'd been through. She slammed the card down on the table, Gwen said, and stormed off into her room. I locked my door that night. I was actually scared. Gwen had called the police the next morning and filed a report. She was now in the process of having Darlene legally removed from her home and was also looking into a restraining order. "I honestly didn't think things would go this far," Gwen admitted. "I thought you overreacted." "I really did. But now I know. Her voice cracked a little. I'm sorry. I told her it wasn't her fault. Darlene had a way of pulling people in, her charm, her stories, her ability to present herself as a victim. It was easy to fall for, especially when you cared about her. But this was a pattern. Not a one-time mistake. Not a rough patch. And I wasn't the only one who'd seen it. After that call, I started hearing more stories. Quiet messages from other people we'd known in college. They began opening up, now that the illusion of Darlene as the fun friend who just had bad luck had started to unravel. One friend said Darlene used to guilt her into driving everywhere, even when it was completely out of the way, and would sulk if she ever said no. Another told me about how Darlene once deleted a shared class project as a prank just before a deadline, nearly causing them both to fail. Someone else admitted Darlene had been incredibly dismissive when they were going through a personal loss, saying things like, "Well, life moves on." I started realizing that maybe the version of Darlene I had loved in college wasn't the full picture. Maybe I had only ever seen the parts of her that she wanted me to see. There's a saying, you don't truly know someone until you live with them. I used to think that was a cliché. Not anymore. And just when I thought the story was winding down, I got another message. It was from Darlene. The message from Darlene came late in the evening, just after 9 o'clock. My phone buzzed with a notification, and when I saw her name, my stomach dropped a little. We hadn't spoken since she left my apartment, and after hearing what Gwen went through, I never expected to hear from her again. The message was short. Hey. Hope you're well. I was wondering if your workplace is hiring. I could use some help. I stared at the screen for a long time before responding. A part of me, the old part, the friend I used to be to her, wanted to ask if she was okay. Another part of me wanted to ignore her altogether. But in the end, I gave the only response I could manage. I'm not aware of any openings at the moment. Best of luck. She didn't reply after that. I never told her that even if there had been openings, I wouldn't have recommended her. I couldn't. After everything that had happened, the broken trust, the manipulation, the way she treated my dog, there was simply no path forward between us. And honestly, that was the moment I realized I was ready to move on. In the weeks that followed, things settled into a peaceful rhythm. I spent more time at home than I had in months. The quiet didn't feel heavy anymore, it felt earned. Murphy, my sweet old golden retriever, seemed lighter too. He followed me from room to room, always a few steps behind, like a little shadow with a wagging tail. I got him a new toy, a plush squirrel, and he carried it everywhere like a badge of honor. My boyfriend, who had quietly supported me through everything, surprised me with a weekend getaway at a cabin near the coast. It was pet-friendly, of course, and just remote enough to feel like we were a million miles from anything complicated. We walked on the beach, grilled dinner under the stars, and let Murphy run wild in the sand. I can't describe how healing it was to be away from the apartment, from the memories, from the noise. The quiet wasn't something to fill, it was something to feel. When we came back, I spent some time reconnecting with friends who'd shown up for me. Some of them, like Gwen, were still dealing with their own fallout from Darlene, and we leaned on each other in a strange, almost therapeutic way. There was comfort in knowing I hadn't imagined it. That I wasn't the only one. But there was something else, too, a slow, growing realization. All this time, I had been mourning the friendship I thought I had with Darlene. The person I remembered from college, funny, quick-witted, emotionally supportive, the person who used to stay up with me during finals, who once cried with me over a bad breakup, who shared memes and microwave dinners and the kind of inside jokes that make you laugh before they're even said out loud. But maybe that person never existed in full. Or maybe she did, but only for a season. That's the hardest part about growing up, I think. Learning that some relationships aren't built to last a lifetime, even the ones that feel like they are. Some people are only meant to walk beside you for a while. And when that chapter ends, you have to let them go, not with bitterness, but with clarity. I didn't hate Darlene. I don't hate her now. But I no longer feel responsible for her either. Whatever path she's on, it's her own. I genuinely hope she finds peace. I hope she finds help. I hope she looks back one day and realizes how many people tried to care for her, and how much damage she caused when she refused to care back. But none of that is mine to carry anymore. A few days ago, I passed by the cafe where Darlene and I used to meet during college breaks. It was quiet, the same mismatched chairs and chipped mugs, the same chalkboard menu that hadn't changed since 2017. I walked in, got a tea, and sat near the window with a book. It was the first time I'd been there alone in a while. And it felt okay. Final thoughts. If you're reading this and you've had a friend like Darlene, someone you loved deeply, someone who brought both joy and chaos, I want you to know this: it's okay to let them go. It doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean you were cruel or impatient or heartless. It means you chose peace. It means you chose to protect the part of yourself that still believes in healthy love, in mutual respect, in friendships that lift you up instead of weighing you down. It means you're still growing. And that's a good thing. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.